So, if you were going to steward a new person through the annals of astrology land and give them some things to begin with, where would you steer them first, textually?
I would, of course, refer them to Estelle Daniels' Astrological Magic that we looked at the very beginning. Because, there are things in there you won't find all put into one place elsewhere. And it was a useful introduction. However, I am, of a traditional and largely Hellenistic bent in my astrology these days. So it would be inappropriate of me not to recommend this massive tome, Chris Brennan's Hellenistic Astrology, The Study of Fate and Fortune. It's a brilliant one because there is more than enough context as to the history and development of what we call astrology. And then you have, for the most part, a clean overview of all of the basic concepts that are used in Hellenistic astrology, at least by modern practitioners today. So it would be a good introduction for those wanting to go down the Hellenistic path. And it is quite enjoyable to read as well, which is always helpful.
Yeah, that is one of the bigger books here. Alan Clay's Sedna definitely beats everybody because that book is so big. Actually, you might be able to see it behind me. It's so, it's just everything, 800 pages of Sedna. But Chris's book, I remember I was like, I think I need to build a fort with this because it's so big.
Yes, it would provide adequate shelter, yes, for quite some time.
And then the translation of Valens is also equally large, on par with some of these more recent books. Is that the only place you would send someone to start, this Estelle? And
No,
Chris?
I've got another two here. Sorry, I should say I've got another two. So because the thing is, like, it is a very good introduction, but not everything is there. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, we were talking about Zodiacal releasing earlier. There's a very brief introduction to that, and most of the stuff there, well, at least the more complex things. So you can begin to get an understanding of how to read lots, for instance, hermetic lots. So, good place to start for Hellenistic astrologers. The other one, I just can't help but recommend the earliest books that I read, right? So 36 Faces, I would have to recommend this because it gave me a unique perspective as a second book I ever read. It gave me a unique perspective of the zodiac. I think it's very easy for newcomers to perceive everything, at least in the sky, as broken into 12 slices of a heavenly pizza. And it's not quite like that. When you have read 36 Faces, you see more of a story in each of the 12. And you honestly start thinking about them more as 36, which have more pronounced borders in every trio. And so it definitely gave me a more nuanced understanding of how the zodiac kind of progresses. Certain stories are told in each 10-degree period. With enough reads and rereads, you start to get a sense already of, oh, well, yeah, this will be in this story I'm experiencing in life fits into this 10-degree window as opposed to that one. So it's very good for that kind of zodiacal detail, let's say. And again, obviously not available anywhere else. Yeah. Most of the historical texts on the Decans are, this is the name of the spirit, and it's someone with this many arms, and they're holding these objects. It doesn't tell you anything about it zodiacally. It's telling you about what the spirit or egregore of that 10-degree window is like. So yeah, that's a must read, I would say.
Yeah. You're reminding me, just quickly to keep with Austin for a minute, that's the way in which he's gathered various world traditions underneath each decan allows you to get a sense of the comparative astrologies out there from the beginning and not be, I think of it like a little chicken, like, you're my mommy, right? Like you're not cathecting onto the first astrological culture you encounter. You're immediately thrust into this world where you're like, well, am I going to go Persian or am I going to go Hellenistic, or am I going to, and so you get this sense of the immensity of the various traditions. And so you have to then fracture your vision in a way and get instantly stereoscopic with how you see things,
Yes. Yeah. It's beautiful to see the similarities and subtle differences and sometimes very pronounced differences between, the various images as they're presented in the Yavana Jamaka or, by Agrippa or in whatever, Liber Hermetis, right? And so the place I feel I got to it, and I mean, I sort of have been reading it on and off nonstop since I got it in 2014, hot off the press. You get to a point where, or at least I got to a point where you see the kind of hall of mirrors reflections of all these different cultures throughout time. And then you come to begin to understand that what is emanating all of those images is kind of more of an amorphous shape or feeling or accumulation of feelings or stories yet untold, stories already told. And there's, this is why the Decans I think are so fascinating, is that you can pull new images out of that amorphous blob I've described. And there's one of those for each of the Decans, 36 amorphous blobs that generate stories and experience and images, and will continue to synthesize and rediscover and channel and receive these forms, these 36 forms in new ways as we progress as species here on the planet.
Yeah. The poet Brian Wilkins actually went on a 3-year journey to do that and only wrote poems during the sun's pathway through each of the Decans and created a small book of poetry called A Wheel of Small Gods. And so he's precipitated those newer images through his mind and with the intention of the healing powers of these amorphous blobs, as you've called them. Because I like the way you've sort of gone back to sort of the commonalities that underpin these different emanations that have been fixed in certain cultural forms.
Yeah, because all of the images are, they have the context of what was relevant to the culture at the time that they perceived the Decan. So I feel as though, because the Decans are in some way more alive than other segments of the zodiac we can look at, we'll get more of those and more variations in those. And I need to put Brian's book on my wish list. Thank you for mentioning that.
It's just nice to see, you're calling out like, we're going to still do this. And I'm like, we literally are doing it now. There are poets engaging with these now and doing it in an astrologically sensitive way to say, hey, tap, 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 what are you? Like, and then blah, out comes a poem. And it's just like,
that's amazing. Thank you. So I have one more beginners.
Okay.
And this really is more of when you've read the other three,